Hi there and welcome to AMEN 443. This is our week 4 lecture on the topic of trends, and the first part will be given by myself and the back end will be given by Dr. Kate Leather. And so I'm very pleased to have Dr. Kate with me. Kate is a consumer psychologist and does a lot of research in the area of robotics and digital technology and artificial intelligence. And so she's going to show you or talk to you about some of the digital trends and how you might use these perhaps in your assignment. Okay, so just a bit of Zoom housekeeping. Please check that your speaker settings are correct. I've muted everyone's microphones, but if you do want to speak, that's also fine. And you can just unmute by clicking at the link on the bottom of your screen. I've got the chat open. Now, the chat window is not actually captured with the Zoom recording, but we will ask you a few questions and you can fill some of those answers in during the lecture as we go. So I guess that's one of the advantages of doing the live Zoom, is that you get to be able to participate and give some responses and interact through that chat function. Okay, so just a reminder that today's tutorials are online. So we won't be having any more face-to-face tutorials or lectures in AMEN 443 anymore. We're going to be transitioning completely online. So for today, while we're still getting everything up to speed, there will be one online tutorial, and that's the current 6 p.m. Tutorial. The Zoom link for this email was sent out yesterday, and it's also on Blackboard under Learning Resources. Next week, the tutes will be online and they will be at the usual time, 12 p.m, 5 p.m, and 6 p.m. So please make sure that you go to your tutorial. And yes, we do know who participates because we can see the details when you log onto the Zoom. Now, if you're not able to attend either the online lecture or the online tute live, that's also fine. We do record the online lecture, and the online tutorial is done in a narrated version that is online. So either is fine, but I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you do keep up with the material. If you don't watch the material either live or the recording, you will have problems with the assignment. This is not an assignment that you can just figure out by yourself without engaging with the material as we go. And as we are moving further into the assignment with the topics of the lecture and tutorial, we are building on that. So next week's lecture, for instance, will build on this week's lecture topic. So if you're not keeping up, you may not be able to fully understand the topics in the future sessions. Okay. So to facilitate any, I guess, student queries without your tutor being available face-to-face, we've got some discussion boards that are set up. So we've got a discussion board under each assessment item. So if you go to market analysis, for instance, the first assignment, there's a discussion board and an FAQ, and this is it here. And so what we're going to be doing over the next few days, Natalie and myself, we will be setting up a whole bunch of different commonly asked questions, or FAQs, for students. And what I would encourage you to do with the thread is be fairly detailed in the subject matter of the thread so that people don't have to click on it. So for instance, success, what does that mean? It's a bit narrow, whereas this one, what is included in the word count for the assignment, clearly, it's a lot more, it's obvious what it's talking about, and you can click on it and get the answer. I also encourage you to put your own tips in. So this is not just between the teaching team and the students, this is also student to student. So we will man this daily. This is the quickest way for you to get answers. Remember, your tutors are casual workers and they won't be working for QT every day. So if you need something answered, here is the place to put it. So all you have to do is click on Create Thread and then put your details in. And as I said, please put a short version of the question in the subject of the thread. Then as you're completing the window to fill it in, then give more details underneath. And that will help people search when there are lots of threads. We don't want people having to click into every thread to see, is this the question that's relevant for me? Okay, so fairly important. And try not to repeat questions that are already in the threads. That just makes it really confusing and dense and difficult for everyone to navigate. So please check the threads first before you add your own. If you're putting up tips and hints, or for instance, you might find some great online tools that could be of use, please do post them. So you might say, online tool for customer journey maps. And then you might put a review of it. So you might say, I've downloaded it, I've used it. You know, this is what I thought, it was quite good. If you do find any of these tools, please indicate if there's a cost to it, so that students don't sort of get all excited by seeing something really cool and then realise you've got to pay for it, because that's not always an option for everyone. Okay, so please do make use of the discussion boards. So today's lecture, we're going to be going through the trend spotting process. We're going to be looking at applying current trends. We're going to also look at how do you identify previous programs or services for the problem being addressed. That is directly relevant to your assignment. You have to do that. And we'll also look at a couple of frameworks for identifying ethical and legal issues for new services or products and unintended consequences. Again, that is a requirement in your assignment that you do this. As always, here are the readings. So these are the ones that I'm directly recommending that you absolutely download. You can click through to these. As you can see, there's a link to versions online, or all of these are also up on QUT Reading, so you can access it either way. My very strong recommendation to you is that you download as we go. If there is a problem with your internet at any point, or if there is, say, a Blackboard outage, basically saying that you can't access any of the materials is not going to be an excuse, because I'm recommending to you download as you go. Then you've got everything on your own computer, or save it on Google Drive, or wherever you might want to save it with your backups, and then you've got access to it. Now, I just want to note here, I'm using the 2019 version of the 10 global consumer trends. There is just recently out a 2020 version of this, which we'll cover in the tutorial. So you'll get in the lecture the 2019 version, in the 2020 version, that will be covered in the tutorial. You can use either for your assignment. We're not that far removed from 2019 that this is a problem, so please feel free to use either. And these are just other references that I'll refer to throughout the lecture. If there's something that interests you, you then should go and have a read. But as I said, download all of the required and recommended every week. Okay, so here we are now. We're in the last lecture of the first phase, the discover phase. So as I explained in the week 1 lecture, there is a purpose to the shape of these diamonds. So you'll notice that that first phase, discover, is a triangle that diverges. So the first 4 weeks are all about getting as much information as possible, reading very widely. From next week, we start to narrow down. So we start to converge. And it is at the point between the diamonds that assignment 1 ends and assignment 2 begins. So the very last topic of the problem and the opportunity to innovate is your problem statement in your last assignment and the last section of your assignment. So what you'll notice that your assignment is structured in the same order as the week contents. And what that means is that every week when you do the lecture and participate in the tutorial with the activities and the worksheets, you should then go away, write up that section in your assignment, and then move on. And basically, we're stepping you through that assignment, which is why it's so vital that you do keep on top of the information. So as I said, today is our last lecture in the first phase of Discover. Okay, so here's a little bit of theory for you. Who knew that there were theories and methodologies around trend spotting? So trend spotting is sometimes seen as a bit of crystal ball gazing. Sometimes it's more accurate than others. And there are organisations that this is what their job is. They trend spot. And one of the reports that I'm going to show you is from an organisation called Data 61. This is an offshoot of the Commonwealth Scientific Organisation, so CSIRO. And their job is to bring together data science with psychologists, with anthropologists, with marketers to try and predict the future. And it's by having those trends that allow government policy and organisations and small business to get ahead of the curve and to come up with innovative products and services ready for when those trends really start to take off. So this is the methodology. This is, I guess, one methodology for how to go about identifying trends. And it's from one of the readings today, Andreasen. And basically what this article outlines is that the purpose of trend spotting is to uncover hidden insights, both qualitative and quantitative, and it's about triangulating data. So no one source of data is going to be able to give you all the information. It's when you start getting information from multiple sources, and it's all starting to say the same thing, that you know that that you're onto something. And so it could be internet tracking data, it could be social media or conversations. You could do text analysis. And there's some great software out there, such as Leximancer, where you can take social media posts, you can take newspaper articles, journal articles, reports, and you can put it all in there. It accepts large volumes of text and data, and it will tell you the key words that are being used and how those words go together. And if you start to see these keywords popping up continually or regularly from different sources, then you know that these sorts of issues are becoming important. So the 5 steps of transporting are: first, define objectives of why you're doing it. In your situation, you're doing this to understand the problem about the use of park and rides. Step 2, familiarise yourself with the environment through environmental scanning. And that's really today's task, is what are all the trends out there? What are all the reports saying? You're going to gather an awful lot of information, not all of which is going to make it into your assignment, but you need to just scan quite broadly in order to be able to pick out those nuggets of gold that will end up in that assignment. Now, what you would typically do, skipping on ahead, what you would typically do once you've done this scanning is that you would identify a couple of things that look like they might be trends. Now, you need to go and triangulate that with another data source. And so you may do that through expert interviews. Go and talk to experts in that industry, people who make products and services for that particular industry or that issue, and start to see, what do they think? What do they think of the trends you've identified from doing the desktop review? Then you would go and talk with potential customers and you get some more information. And then you'd put that together with your expert interviews and with your environmental scan. And finally, you would then look at, what does this mean for innovative strategies and practices? So it would be very much a case of, what does this mean for our organisation, and what kinds of products and services should we be adapting and changing on? What sort of things might we need to invest in for the future to help our organisation? And so you can have different time horizons as to how critical some of these things might be. So as I mentioned, there is some great reports out there on trends. The ones by Euromonitor are highly reliable. So Euromonitor International is a large organisation, and part of what they do is trend analysis and market reports. You can access these reports from the library database. So if you go to the library databases and do the alphabetical search, go to P for passport GMID, so just think, your passport to the world. If you click on that, that will take you through to a whole bunch of information. And they've got industry reports on everything from travel through to pet food. They also produce little snippets of trends in different areas. They have videos, and every year they're producing the 10 global consumer trends. So I'm going to go through the 2019 one for you today. The 2021 will be covered in the lecture. And you can see that there are some things that are similar, but there are other things that are different. So for instance, we've got the age agnostic consumer. So older people not wanting to age gracefully. In fact, older and elderly people don't like buying products that are labelled for the elderly. So if you can come up with a product that might be useful for the elderly, but you don't position it that way, you'll get a more receptive audience to them. Back to basics for status. So the days of being a conspicuous consumer are starting to fade. So instead of accumulating stuff, we now want experiences. And so we're seeing people no longer looking at buying a home and getting a mortgage. People being quite transitory, and that could be because of the gig economy, where you can't get easily a full-time permanent job, or people want to work for a bit, go and travel, or they want to work from anywhere in the world. And so it's about being portable. It's also about, and I guess this also links to the next one, conscious consumer. It's about being socially conscious. People are really starting to be aware of the diminishing resources on the planet and trying to do the right thing. And so the socially conscious movement is driving everything from fashion through to white goods. We've got digitally together, and I'm going to leave Kate to talk about the digital trends. This one's an interesting one, the everyone's an expert. With the rise of citizen science and really access to the internet, people no longer want professionals to be in the driver's seat and tell them what to do. Yes, we want our doctor to know a lot of stuff, but we don't want the doctor to act as if we know nothing and they know everything. So the doctor, that expert-client relationship. We can Google stuff too. In fact, that is a problem in many ways for medical diagnosis, is everyone goes to Dr. Google and you think you've got anything from tuberculosis right through to smallpox. So that can be both a challenge and it can be an opportunity. Finding my JOMO. So JOMO means joy of missing out. And we're actively unplugging, going camping. Camping has increased because people want to get away from the everyday and just not be as connected and plugged in, which is kind of the antithesis of being digitally together. We also know that people don't want to rely on other people. They want to be able to look after themselves. And again, we're seeing trends in the aged care area where people don't want to go to aged care facilities. They want to be able to look after themselves and be in control. And what does that mean then for perhaps park and rides and parking? One of the things is that people don't want to be driven. They want to drive themselves. It gives them a feeling of control. But what does that mean then if you don't have the car parks? We know that there's a trend away from plastics. And so we see a lot of products and services that had its heyday maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago are starting to come back. So gone are the plastic shopping bags, and we're seeing the pull-along trolleys, which I remember seeing my grandparents use when I was a kid and thinking how old-fashioned that was. Well, now they're back in fashion. I want it now. Everything's instant. We think in terms of characters. People don't want to invest time to read in detail. People aren't prepared to wait. So you email someone or you text someone, and if they don't text back immediately, it can be really stressful. And so that sets expectations of what consumers want from services. And we're seeing a rise in the single person household, loner living. Something like now 1 in 4, 1 in 5 households now have a single person occupant. And that changes everything from the size of the house to the portion quantities of fruit and vegetables and food to the size of appliances, but also it's accompanied by a rise in social isolation. So we're seeing mental health issues starting to result from living alone. But again, these can be opportunities for other new services. So the current ones that are just out in that new report are being beyond human. So again, looking at technology, catch me in seconds. So that's linked to I want it now. Frictionless mobility. So being able to move and interface and having everything seamlessly connecting. Inclusivity, that's linked to the conscious consumer. Minding myself is very much about I can look after myself. The multifunction home. So we're seeing homes that double as all sorts of things, home offices. And we're certainly going to see a rise of that at the moment when people need to work from home as part of the social distancing strategy. Private personalisation. So we want our data to be about us, but we want it personalised. This is an interesting, proudly local going global. So it's really that trade-off between buying and being connected to the global economy, but looking after the local community. Reuse revolutionaries is linked very much to I want a plastic-free world, and we want clean air everywhere. So air is starting to become an issue. And that's going to reflect in the way that we design our cities and encouraging people to move outside of the metropolitan areas. So these trends are not in isolation. Often several of these will converge to create a mega trend, and that then has a significant impact. That brings me to megatrends. So this report is by Data61. It is one of the required readings that I've got at the beginning of the lecture notes. And what they've done is through data science, through psychology, through content analysis of reports, they've worked out there's 6 megatrends. And these do align with those 10 consumer trends that I spoke to you about and other reports. So we know more from less. It's about resource management, going. We're losing biodiversity. The Silk Highway is all about the move from economic power from the west to the east. Forever Young is about our aging population who don't want to get old. They don't identify as being old. Virtually here is the digital revolution, and then great expectations we've already touched on with consumers wanting everything and wanting it now. There's another report that I've got in the recommended recommended readings, which also has details on megatrends, but they're a little more detailed. So where this report here has these 6, those 6 have been more or less split out into sort of subcategories in this report. So these 2 are quite nice to read and say which of these affect the usage of park and rides. So it could be smart settlements and new technology, or I'd say increased urbanisation is a section here that is worth having a look at. I'm not going to touch on the digital megatrends because Kate's going to go through that in the back end of this lecture. So we spoke about trend spotting, and there's some websites that you can go to and get interesting reports. So this one was from last year, and it's all about experiences. So that really converges with that trend that people aren't so much as interested in buying things and possessions as they are in having experiences. And these are some interesting reports around that. We will talk a little bit about experiences when we get to the lecture on prototyping, where we look at how do you design up an experience for commuters that provides value and solves the user problem and the transport and main roads problem. Here's another link. If you click on each of these, you'll go to the section on the best 8 industries from last year. The best ones from this year are not yet out. And it tells you all kinds of trends related to these industries. So these could give you some ideas when you get to the solution stage in the next assignment for what sorts of different products and services might you want to suggest. Now, Kickstarter is another great place to go. This one's not a trend spotting website, but you can spot the trends by going to Kickstarter. So by that I mean, if you have a look at the top projects, that will give you an idea of what is popular, because people don't invest in things that aren't popular. So for instance, we've got a travel jacket here. We've got household items here. This one is a teamwork game. So have a look at some of those, and again, have a look at what seems to be on trend. It's another really useful site. This site is on small business trends. And this one is all about Euromonitor and some of the consumer trends. So if you go to Google Scholar or Google and type in consumer trends or business trends, heaps of stuff comes up. You can go to sites like Kickstarter, and I would strongly encourage you to do this, go to the Euromonitor under the Passport GNID database on the library. So how do you then use trends in the innovation process? Well, the first step is identifying the key trends relevant for an issue. So let's imagine that our issue is about healthy eating and the rise of obesity. So a problem that we might have identified, our user problem, could be insufficient time to prepare nutritious meals. Now, using the 2019 Euromonitor top 10 trends, these are the ones that I've picked out that I'd say, you know what, these are the ones I think that really influence the ability to prepare nutritious meals. So digital recipes, shopping online for groceries. I want it now. Loner living, plastic-free food, forever young, and finding my JOMO. And so what I do is take those and then I classify them as barriers or motivators for the behaviour that I want. So for you, when you've worked out your user problem, think of what are the trends that actually create the user problem? And that's a barrier to getting people to use the park and rides in a way that's more efficient for transport and main roads. And then think about which of the trends that you've identified as relevant to commuting actually could motivate someone to act differently, to park somewhere differently, or maybe not use their car at all, or to use a car park in a different way when it's being underutilised. And so I've split those out. You can absolutely do this in your assignment in the section on trends. It's a nice way to classify the trends, and it shows us you can go from being descriptive to being more analytical. This is a synthesis technique. And then finally, you would then use these trends in the service design process to understand the customer experience and to ideate. And I'm not going to do that today because we're going to touch on that a bit later when we get to solutions. And I guess just as a bit of a tip here, I know that a number of you are already coming up with solutions that you might think you want to do. By all means, jot those down. But just remember, in your first assignment, there are no solutions. It's all about what is the problem and understanding the user. So if I was you, I'd just jot the idea down and then stay focused on what you need to do for assignment 1. So assignment 1 is not about coming up with a solution yet. Assignment 1 is about understanding your user and understanding their problem. And that is it. That is all you do in assignment 1. So here's an activity that I want you to do, and then I'm going to stop the recording while you do that. So go to the QUT website, the bookshop, and have a look at the different kinds of photos and images and products and what that might mean for fashion trends. And I want you to put that in the chat. And as I said, the chat doesn't actually get recorded in the Zoom recording. So those of you watching this at home, please do the activity, but you're not able to interact. Okay, so thanks for all the comments in the chat. We saw a whole bunch of items around colours, and you'll notice that there's no colours in there that actually belong to competitor universities. So I would guess that's fairly strategic. The bookshop also sells more than just books. They sell clothing, they sell food. And so that one-stop shop is certainly a trend. It's about, I want it and I want it now. I don't want to have to go to 3 places. I want to go to one place and get everything in that one-stop shop. So speaking of trends in fashion, this is another database which is absolutely outstanding, and it's on the QUT library database. We're one of the few universities that have this one. It's worth tens of thousands of dollars to access. So it's under W. So if you go and do the alpha search for databases, go to W for WGSN, which is the Worth Global Style Network database. This will predict what's going to be in season for fashion in the upcoming year. And it's not just the colours, it's the styles, it's the fabrics, and it's different for men and women and different categories. So you can see here you've got different markets. You can look at what's upcoming for different seasons, different categories, etc., different regions. So you might go, well, yeah, but I'm not designing clothing. Well, if you design up a physical product and you've got to pick a colour, or you're doing an app, you can go here and find out what's going to be in trend or on trend or up and coming. And if you use that when you do assignment 2 to design up your products, and you say, I'm picking leopard print because that's about to come into fashion according to the, and you reference the appropriate report, that's going to get you brownie points rather than saying, I'm doing it in leopard print. Yeah, well, why is that? So do have a look at that. I'd have a look at it now so that you're familiar with it, and maybe take a note and download a few articles and put them aside for when we start to ideate later in the semester. Now, I'm very pleased, to, as I said, to be able to introduce you to Dr. Kate Leatherin. Kate has a background in robotics and AI. She works for the QUT Centre for Behavioural Economics, Society and Technology. The acronym is BEST. So it's the BEST Centre at QUT. And she's going to take you through the digital megatrends and talk to you about some of the issues that come out from each of those and give you some tips and ideas that may help you with your assignment. So over to you now, Kate.